Hello everyone and welcome back to Next Gen Gaming SC. I'm your host Josh Schneider and we are here today for Meta Breakdown number 1. So there are a few tournaments that I would like to take note of from this past weekend. We had the very first planetary qualifier of the Set 3 meta that took place in Bologna, Italy. Now, this planetary qualifier was supposed to take place back in the first wave of qualifiers in Set 2 meta, but there was some flooding. They had to cancel and reschedule, and that event took place this past weekend with Cad Bane Tarkentown taking the top spot, winning the tournament. Sabine ECL, 3 spots in the top 8. We see Han 1 Green and Bosk Blue also with spots in the top 4. Then we had a Palp 3 Tarkentown. That's Chancellor Palpatine Tarkentown. Very interesting deck in the top 8. Ray Tarkentown and again, the 2 more Sabine ECL. So great showing for Sabine ECL. Now Sabine ECL was the most represented deck in the field. 127 total players. 24 of those players on Sabine ECL. So 3 of those, or 1/8 of the Sabine ECL players, converting into the top 8. We had 12 Bosk Blue decks. That was the second most represented deck. And then Django Tarkentown, the third most represented deck with 10, but no Django in the top 8. So not a great showing for Django in Bologna. So we'll take a look at the winning deck list real quick, the Cad Tarkentown deck list. This is just a great mid-range cunning deck list that is super good into aggro decks, especially Sabine ECL, because it can completely nullify your opponent's turn 1 play, right? If you're going against, say, Sabine ECL, it doesn't matter if you have the initiative, you just pass. You don't play a unit. You wait until they play their first unit, then you play your first unit, ping that unit that they played with Cad Bane's ability, and then Tarkentown it off the board. So, you know, you're in such a good spot against aggro decks because you can completely wipe out their first turn play. If they want to dodge that, say if, you know, Sabine ECL wants to dodge that, what's the worst they can do to you? They just claim the initiative. They don't play anything on the first turn of the game and then play maybe Cassian Andor on turn 2 so that they dodge Cad Bane, ping plus Tarkentown. Like it's a spot that they don't want to be in. You're really ahead at that point anyways because you've already put them on the back foot. Like they're going much slower than they want to go because they're dodging Cad Bane plus Tarkentown. So this deck extremely good into Sabine and other aggro decks. You also have the possibility of now you're 2 of them on turn 2 playing a Bosk or Zuckuss on the second turn of the game. Because you have in this deck, you have such a great Underworld package. You have a total of 12 turn 1 plays. They're all Underworld. The only the only unit that's not Underworld in this deck is Ruthless Raider. So you have a great Underworld package. The Cad Bane ping is pretty much going to happen every single round you need it to. And again, your turn 1 plays are all going to turn on. Now you're 2 of them to try and get out that Zuckuss or Bosk early on turn 2. I mean, if you can get Zuckuss out on turn 2, you have a 6/6 Saboteur unit in the ground arena, and then on turn 3, your 4 resource turn, you can play Forlom. Now you have a 5/5 unit with ambush. The Zuckuss becomes a 7/7. Like, this is just a really bad spot for your opponent to be in. So this deck can completely nullify what your opponent wants to do early with their early opening units. Then you can, you know, explode with now you're 2 of them. You have some great mid-game plays with, you know, Bosk and Zuckuss, Cad Bane coming in late, kind of cleaning the board up for you and helping you get across the finish line. But yeah, this deck is just very well-rounded. It's going to be a little bit weaker in the control matchups. There are some pieces in the deck that are going to help with the control matchups. I mean, you are running 3 Bazine, 2 in the main, 1 in the sideboard. Bazine, of course, great into the control decks. Pick off that Super Laser Blast or that Vigilance when they really need it. But yeah, you've got some pieces against control. Lurking TIE Phantom, of course, is really good into the control matchup. But, I mean, you're going to feast on these aggro decks, and that is exactly what this deck was able to do. There was only 3 Cad Bane Tarkentown in the whole tournament. You have one get to the top 8 and win. And, you know, is it coincidence that the most represented deck in the field and in the top 8 was Sabine ECL, and we have Cad Bane Tarkentown on top in the end? that's a great matchup for CAD. So I don't think it's really a coincidence that CAD ends up on top. So definitely check out, if you haven't, SWU Competitive Hub. They actually have all of the deck lists from the top 8 posted from this tournament. I will link their website down below in the description. Definitely check them out. They do great work with the competitive Star Wars Unlimited tournaments. The next tournament that I want to take a look at from this past weekend was a win-a-case tournament that took place in Atlanta, Georgia at CardsHQ. Big shout out to CardsHQ and Nick from CardsHQ for getting me these top 8 deck lists and helping me get some event coverage of this particular tournament. I will put a link to CardsHQ down in the description below. Definitely check their website out and stop by their store if you are in the area. So here in this win-a-case tournament, the top 8, we see 2 Yoda decks. We've got Yoda Blue and Yoda Tarkentown up at the top. Now, keep in mind these 2 players split in the end. They did not play it out. So we don't know which variant of Yoda would have come out on top, but we know that Yoda was going to be the winner of this tournament. We see Sabine ECL and Anakin Blue also in the top 4. And then we have Jango ECL, Bosk Blue, and 2 Rey Tarkentown decks that made the top 8. Now, interestingly enough, the only undefeated deck through the Swiss rounds was Jango ECL, but Jango falling in the first top 8 match. But yeah, 2 Yoda decks, your finalists. Let's take a quick look at those 2 decks. We had Tyler on the Yoda Blue. Now, this deck looks like more of a soft control deck to me, mid-range to soft control. Has a lot of really good value plays, a lot of good value units, plenty of Sentinel units, lots of ways to restore and just try and get to the later game. You've got things like a great removal package with blue, right? You've got the full blue removal package, including 3 Vigilance, which is really going to be your main draw to double blue, right? Vigilance for 4 resources is extremely impactful, to say the least. And, I mean, just think, against the aggro matchup, pay 4, defeat a unit, and heal 5 damage. Vigilance for 4 is great. We do have C-3PO in this particular deck. C-3PO goes great with Yoda's ability, essentially becomes free card draw for you. Another card that's so good in these Yoda decks is You're My Only Hope. So You're My Only Hope and Yoda's ability just seems like they were made for each other, because now You're My Only Hope isn't random. As long as, a unit has left play this phase, use Yoda's action ability. It's free. You get to draw a card, and then you choose a card from your hand to put back on top of the deck. So, for instance, turn 4, 5 resource turn, you could get out Luke Skywalker, right? A unit's left play, action ability from Yoda, draw a card, put Luke back on top, and then you pay 3 for You're My Only Hope. You have 2 resources remaining. It costs 5 less because of You're My Only Hope. Luke Skywalker 2 turns early, right? Like, that is a super good play. If you need an early Sentinel unit, you could do that same thing with Bendu. You get Redemption out early if you needed a Space Sentinel a little bit earlier, say into the Jango Tarkentown match. Like, You're My Only Hope and Yoda just go so well together. Could be extremely explosive and just get these big drops out early. I mean, you could even play similar to, now you're 2 of them bringing out a 5-cost unit on turn 2 in the Cad Bane deck. You could play You're My Only Hope on turn 2 into Ki-Adi-Mundi or Rey in this particular deck. Now, again, it's a little bit more of a setup. Your opponent has to have a turn 1 play. You have to have a turn 1 play, and there has to be some sort of trade that can be made on turn 2 to be able to pick which card you want on top for You're My Only Hope, being able to use that action ability with Yoda. So, really solid, well-rounded list here. Looks like a lot of fun to play, and great to see double blue Yoda in the top 8 and in the finals of the Atlanta Case Tournament. So the other Yoda deck list, let's take a look at that as well. We've got Yoda Tarkentown, this one piloted by Joel Lee. So Joel, if you're familiar with this channel, we did some coverage on the Greenville Planetary Qualifier back a couple months ago, and Joel Lee won that tournament with Rey Tarkentown. And so here he is with Yoda Tarkentown, making it to the finals of another larger competitive event, this time in Atlanta. So, super cool to see Joel back in the finals here. this time with Yoda Tarkentown. Very similar to the Rey Tarkentown deck, but we are not... there's a few cards different here. We've got a great removal package. I love that Joel's running 2 of each Fell the Dragon, Takedown, and Rivals Fall. You've got You're My Only Hope and C-3PO to go with Yoda's ability. Those 2 cards just go so well with Yoda. So those are kind of auto includes if you're going to run Yoda. But yeah, other than that, very similar to the red-blue hero list that we are seeing. You know, think about this. One of the big draws to Han 2 Blue, if we go back to early in the Set 2 meta, Han 2 Blue came out of the gates, blazing, right? Was doing so well, big results early in Set 2 meta. And one of the big draws to that deck was being able to play Luke Skywalker a turn early. And in this deck, we can play Luke Skywalker 2 turns early. Again, a little bit more of a setup. You have to have Luke plus You're My Only Hope and be able to use Yoda's action ability to set it up. But you can play Luke Skywalker 2 turns early, which can be absolutely huge in the vast majority of matchups. And then we can also get Crate Dragon out 2 turns early. So, Crate Dragon out 2 turns early, absolutely nasty. And he's not even damaged, right? Like Han 2, they play these units early. They've got damage put on them. In this case, no damage. Again, more of a setup, but if you can get that off, if you can get that Luke Skywalker out early, or you can get that Crate Dragon out early, it is going to be some really bad news for your opponent. So super cool. Yoda Tarkentown list making the finals at the Atlanta Win-A-Case tournament. Now there's one more tournament that I want to touch on before we get into kind of the overall meta breakdown, and that is another Win-A-Case tournament in Madison, Wisconsin. We had a big showing for Quinlan Tarkentown, 2 Quinlan Tarkentowns in the top 8, with Quinlan Tarkentown winning the tournament. A big showing for Sabine ECL here as well, 4 Sabine ECL in the top 8, 1 Han 2 Blue, which ended up making the finals, and then we had a Lando Red as well, which is super cool to see Lando make the top cut. We are going to take a quick look at the winning deck list. This was provided by Loopy from Late Night Gaming. Big shout out to him and his YouTube channel, Late Night Gaming. I'm going to link the channel down in the description below. There is some fantastic Star Wars Unlimited content on that channel, so definitely check out that channel. Big thanks to Loopy. And he played a great tournament, and this is a super clean Quinlan Tarkentown list. Now, this is the aggro version of Quinlan Tarkentown. We've seen a lot of the more mid-range, tempo-oriented Quinlan Tarkentown decks, but here we've got the aggro version that has the complete Rebel package, so you can get those big explosive starts just like you can in, say, Sabine. So we've got the Rebel package. You do have some good, tempo plays. Of course, Plo Koon can completely swing the board in your favor, but we have Kira, right? Kira can disrupt the opponent and what they're trying to do. You also have Force Throw. Force Throw is fantastic. Then you have Spark of Rebellion. So you've got plenty of ways to target the opponent's hand and disrupt what they're trying to do. And then you could also just blaze right past them as well, because this deck can fly. So super cool list. Great to see Quinlan Tarkentown on top at the Madison, Wisconsin Win-A-Case tournament. And now into what we're all waiting for, the overall meta breakdown. So here are the most top cut appearances through week 5, or through 5 weekends of tournament play in Twilight of the Republic meta. Here's your top 10. So Sabine ECL, right now, the most top cut appearances with 38, followed closely by Django Tarkentown with 35, and then it's a pretty big jump down to Anakin. So Sabine ECL and Django Tarkentown, the only 2 decks, have 20 plus top cut appearances. And the percentage that you see there, that is the top cut percentage. So 17% of top cuts have been Sabine ECL, and then 16% Django Tarkentown, and so on. Now, again, down in third, we've got Anakin Blue with 19 appearances in the top cut, and then Rey Tarkentown in fourth. So red-blue hero deck still doing very well. If you put these together, they're very close to Django and Sabine's numbers here. So red-blue hero still doing great work and very relevant in the meta. And then it goes down to Bosk Blue with 13. Now, I've seen a lot of people mention that Bosk Blue really is probably one of the best decks in the current meta. And you might argue, well, it doesn't have as many top cut appearances, but think about this. There's not as many players playing Bosk Blue. Not as many players are bringing hard control decks to tournaments. So Sabine ECL, Django Tarkentown, these red-blue hero decks, they are much more represented overall in these different tournaments. So Bosk Blue with 13 top cut finishes, I think, is pretty good, considering that there is a great chance it is not as represented overall in the field of these different tournaments. So Bosk Blue, they're rounding out the top 5. Then the rest of the decks in single digits, you've got Cad Tarkentown with 9, Han 1 Yellow's up there with 8, Palp 1, that's Emperor Palpatine Yellow with 6. Then we've got Han 2 ECL and Quinlan Tarkentown with 5. So these are all of the decks that have 5 or more top cut appearances. And what this tells me is if you are preparing for a large competitive tournament, the 2 decks that you need to prepare for the most, because not only are they the most represented overall, but they are the most represented in the top cut, that is Sabine ECL and Django Tarkentown. The first 2 decks you should be preparing for are those 2 decks. And then I think Red Blue Hero and Bosk Blue are your next targets, but Cad Bane Tarkentown really picking up some traction here as well, winning that planetary qualifier. So again, Sabine ECL and Django Tarkentown, definitely be prepared for those because those are going to be the most represented decks in most fields in large competitive tournaments. Now, last thing we'll take a look at before we go is the most wins here in the first 5 weekends of competitive play in the Twilight of Republic meta. Django Tarkentown on top with 8 wins. No wins this past weekend for Django, but 8 wins. Django still on top. Now the percentage next to it, 23%, that is the win percentage of the Django Tarkentown decks that have made top cuts. So you have 35 Django Tarkentown decks that have made top cut. 8 of those have won. So 23% of the Django Tarkentown decks that make the top cut have won the tournament. And then you go down to Anakin Blue and Sabine ECL, both sharing 4 wins apiece. Both with 4 wins, but Anakin Blue a much higher win percentage because Anakin Blue only has 19 top cut appearances and 4 wins, whereas Sabine, 38 top cut appearances and only 4 wins. So a much lower win percentage there. Han 1 Yellow, next on the list with a pretty high win percentage, 3 wins, 38% of the time Han 1 Yellow is winning when they make the top cut because only 8 Han 1 Yellow decks have made the top cut. And then Emperor Palpatine Blue, another one that is or has a very high win percentage because only 4 of those decks have made the top cut with 2 wins. And then we got Cad Bane Tarkentown with 2 wins, winning 22% of the time they make the top cut. That is all of the decks that have 2 or more wins in set 3 meta. But do note there are 9 other decks, 9 different decks that have 1 win apiece. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to this meta breakdown. As I mentioned at the end of the last video, we do have some exciting news coming for the channel. And this weekend, I plan on getting some gameplay footage, some coverage from a local win-a-case tournament. So the plan is to have another gameplay video out next week, the first one on the channel with set 3 meta. So guys, thank you so much for all the support. May the force be with you, and until next time, take care.